is the only resume that I have created so far. And this resume is basically from the experience of, I guess, a fresh graduate. Maybe you are a fresh graduate of a university or even a programming bootcamp, and then you might have some internship experience. So I would say this will be very relatable for students or for people who are transitioning into a software developer role. So I guess this is something that I'm going to go through, and you guys will probably learn a few things about my resume. So the format of this resume or the format of this review is basically I'm going to go from the top to the bottom, because as a recruiter or anyone who's looking through your resume, that's how you usually read, right? From top to bottom. Then at the same time, I'm going to, zoom into the different parts of the resume, whether it is the about me or the experience. And for this like whole template design, I got it from Microsoft Word. I don't know if it still exists, but the design, I think I chose it because it looks the best out of a lot. So I think that's why. But I think doesn't really matter if the design, for some recruiters it might not be very good. For some, they don't really matter. But what I would change is basically have, rather than having two columns, I will put it one column, so it's easier to read, because there's a lot of things. Yeah, so I don't, it looks nice, but maybe in terms of a user experience point of view, it doesn't. So let's start with the first section, which is the name. So usually I don't know if this is like the best, but I don't know if you were to put a profile picture or a headshot of you, that it will increase the chance of you getting a call back from the recruiters. But I feel that the name is good enough. Yeah, I think there's nothing much to talk about. So the next thing is your personal statement. So inside the personal statement is basically where you introduce yourself. So for me, I guess a little bit about myself is that I was going through a career change from psychology to programming. Then at least I guess the recruiter know that, okay, this person is coming from a very beginner or junior developer role kind of thing. And then at the same time, for myself, I found a grammar mistake where I have this statement that says I am developing and continuous learning. So I feel that I don't know if it's a huge grammar mistake, but I feel that if I were to just make it concise, saying that I am developing the craft as a programmer, I think it's good enough. And then lastly, I have this moreover trying interesting and new technologies. So grammar mistake and typos are like a huge red flag to recruiters, as they feel that you might not be able to communicate as well, because communication is very important, especially in finding a job or working with other people. So really vet through on your typos and your grammar mistake, because these are beginner mistake and you're going through a professional role. So, and I assume that most software developer roles are in the English language, so just improve on that. Then at the same time, I also found some irrelevant statement. For example, if I were to say moreover trying out interesting and new technologies such as Flutter and Alexa, so I would say that this is a little bit irrelevant. But if I were to have a Flutter developer job or applying for a Flutter developer job, this is like still okay, because you are interested in a Flutter developer job. So the recruiters will be like, okay, so this person have actually used or have played around with Flutter. And then with Alexa, I don't think I have to put in Alexa, because if the job has some like requirements, or maybe it's nice to have Alexa skills, that you add in. So basically add in stuff that is related to the job scope as much as you can. If you don't have any, then that is fine. So I'm going to talk a little bit about if you don't have the relevant experience. But for most of it, if you want to have a software developer job as a Flutter developer, usually you need some Flutter skills. But if you don't have it, then it is okay, because I guess as a programmer, you can definitely learn from one stack to the other, because that's how software development is. You can just learn on the go. I'd like to share a little bit of experience. When I used to be a Flutter developer for a startup, there was this senior developer. He didn't know Flutter, so what we did was we did pair programming where he and I sat beside each other, and then he will just try to do some feature, and then I will see how he code, and then explain to him what are this and that, and what are like stateless and stateful widgets and how to use them and such. So in the end, like after a few days of just sitting beside him, yeah, he got to know the syntax of Dart and Flutter, and yeah, and then he can work on his own. So you can definitely work as a Flutter developer without any Flutter experience, but if you were to have a lot of people applying for the job, then having Flutter experience for Flutter developer job will make you more appealing to the recruiters or employers. All right. And that's where you should put it inside your projects. So for myself, I did not put in the tech stack for the projects that I've shown. So for example, there is this thing called Halal Goe, which is a web platform for Muslims to find halal food, right? But the thing is, as a software developer, I think they are more interested on your tech stack. So you can just put in like Ruby on Rails with, I guess, Postgres database. You don't have to explain everything. But if you're a Flutter developer and then you have created a project out of Flutter, maybe it's a mobile app, and then you can just explain further on what you have used. For example, your architecture, like for example, you use MVC, or you used a state management, like for example, Redux or Block or Provider. Then these are the things that you should put in your projects, because as a Flutter developer, you tend to go use these technologies for the project. So at least the recruiters or even the employers or even the engineering manager or whatsoever knows that, okay, this person have used this kind of state management, then it increase your chance of getting a developer job or a Flutter developer job. So that was what I was missing from this resume. So let's go to the next one, which is experience. So for myself, student experience is not equal to experience. This is experience when you're working with people in an actual company. So for myself, I was interning at this company called Tinker Tanker, where I have taught students in many various languages like Python or C Sharp, or Microbit is not a programming language, but it is a software that allows you to, program your micro devices. Like it's like a little bit of IoT, but I also did a little bit of JavaScript. And then if you go to the second one, you see here that student, then it doesn't make sense. So you should put any student experience, whether it is like a programming boot camp or your university, under the education. So just put any education experience in the education section. I don't think being a student at a programming bootcamp holds as experience, because I mean any university also have that student experience, so it doesn't really so just don't. All right, so the next thing is, I guess one good thing that I've done is also to list the tech skills or the technologies that I've used on the job or on the internship experience that I have done. So in the internship, I have used C Sharp and Python. So these are the keywords that recruiters are looking for a certain type of role. But at the same time, I guess as a software developer, having versatility on knowing different programming languages actually makes you a better candidate, because I guess if you want to work at a big company, for example, like Google or Amazon, Microsoft, they don't really have like one tech stack. They have many tech stack that they used. But if you were to work at a small, medium company or a startup, they usually have one tech stack. So it really depends on the job role. That's why I guess putting the tech skills as much as you can, depending on the job itself, will be very helpful for the recruiters. So if you were to apply for a startup role and they just use Flutter for their mobile application, and then just put in the Flutter skills and such, But if you were to put your CSS and HTML, it doesn't really help in the resume because they're looking for Flutter developer. Unless your designs are amazing. So it really depends. But most of the time, put in the related tech skills as much as you can. But for bigger companies, they don't really look into your tech skills that much. But at the same time, you have to be very, very good and perceived very good in your technical skills, because that's what big companies are looking for. They're looking for potentially very good developers. All right, let's go to the next one. At the same time, yeah, put in related experience, tech experience for tech jobs, right? So if you were to have non-related tech experience, I don't think you should put it in unless there are certain things. For example, if you were to work as a, for example, product manager, then you can add in if you were to work in a startup, because I guess other than being a software developer, you need to control yourself or manage yourself in terms of the deadlines and tasks, right? But other than that, really depends on the company that you work for, because if you work at a small, medium, or startup kind of like size companies, you might have to take more than one role. But if you were to work in a big company or big tech companies, then I guess having a specific tech experience will be very beneficial for recruiters to look at it as well. But see how it goes, because every recruiter or every employer has their own take on what is a good resume or what counts as a valuable skill for the company. So the next thing is context. So I would say that I took a lot of space just put in the context. It looks nice, but I think it should be it can be squeezed into one line, so I can put in more stuff for my context as well. So that's why I feel that I should put it as small as possible. But yeah, I think this is not the most important key. No. I don't think that it requires one line, but at the same time, recruiters will look into your LinkedIn, and then for, I guess, engineering people or tech people, they probably look at your GitHub. So I've interviewed the CTO of Reflectly, which is a startup that has a journaling app. And then the CTO said that he usually goes to the GitHub. So as a developer, I would recommend you to go to your GitHub as well. And then you can put your email, and then you can put your contacts as well. Then lastly, your education. So your education background, just put in the latest one. If you have a lot, just put the latest one on top. And if it's related to the job role, like for example computer science, then put in what is going to be beneficial to the role that you have. For example, if the role requires data structures and algorithms, then if your university or any your education course has those, then just put it in, so that at least the recruiters know, okay, this person has the knowledge of data structures and algorithms. Like, think of recruiters have a checklist of skills that they want to see, and then you also have it. It really makes the mind of the recruiters or employers like, okay, this person knows the skills that I want. That means that you have a high chance of being employed. If you don't have it, that's fine. One thing that you can do is to always learn by yourself and add it in, because as employers, I guess recruiters, like, they don't really care about where you got your education from. If you can show it through your projects or your side projects, then I think it's good enough, because not everyone in a computer science degree can code well or might have interest, or like, there's a lot of factors in it. So if you don't have the skills, learn it and then make a project out of it and then put it inside your resume. Then another thing is, does having a certificate, like for example going through a Flutter course, does it count as education? So I would say personally no, because you are just following a course rather than building something up by yourself. So I would say projects are much more appealing than going through courses, because if you were to go through a lot of courses, in my opinion and impression, is that you're just learning for the sake of learning. But if you were to create for example, a project out of a course, for example, if this course is teaching you how to build a to-do app, and then you build the to-do app project, if you were to build a variation or another version of the to-do app that you learn for your own self, then you can put it in your side project. So I would say courses are not exactly really that important unless you have some interest in it, I would say. So the difference between very interested programmer and a person who just goes through courses is that people tend to hire people who are interested in programming because they have the motivation and the skills to become a great developer, rather than people who just go through courses as such. But it really depends. So I would highly not recommend to put courses because they don't really talk about. I mean, it shows that you are always learning, but I guess if you want to stand out, then create side projects that is actually cool and that can help you personally, like for example, I like to rock climb, so maybe create an app where I post my rock climbing videos and share it, and has like buttons and like features that can search and whatnot. So these kind of things can help you make yourself interesting in a resume. So lastly, you have this other section. If you have space, you can put this other section where you put in your related tech experience that maybe you do in the site. For example, volunteering in tech events such as hackathons. So I guess it makes you like, oh, okay, this person is really interested in being in the tech community. Or for example, you mentor people in tech. So for example, for me, I teach uh, needy students in programming such as Scratch. I actually taught them Python as well. So I guess like with if you were to mentor people like recruiters or even employees, say like, okay, maybe this person can actually, you know, handle interns as well, that kind of thing, because they have some mentoring experience or teaching experience. Because I guess you definitely will be teaching other people or new people that's joining the company. So it really depends on the company itself. But this is like good to have. I don't think this is like it's a must have, but it gives a good impression for the recruiters or employers who are looking through your resume. So I guess overall the good points is that I've added like tech experience only, so I don't have non-related tech experience. Then I also put in the projects that I've done. And lastly, like this is really just for my design pleasure, that I have good branding. It's all yellow, so I don't think your resume necessarily needs to have good like design, because it's just like one resume out of many. But I guess if you want to have outstanding resume for a design role, then I think that's good. But you can edit and see how it goes. Then that to be improved is that you should have links to your LinkedIn and GitHub. Yes, so it should be on the top, because the first thing first, I guess recruiters want to know if you are present online as much as you can, because if you don't have any presence online, then it will be a little bit difficult for the recruiter to trust your resume, because now you should have a LinkedIn and also a GitHub if you're a programmer. If you don't use GitHub, you use GitLab or any other like Git services, then that's fine. It doesn't have to be GitHub. It's just that GitHub is the most popular one that people use. Next one is for me, I'll probably have to improve my grammar and also check if I would have any spelling mistake, because that's a huge like it's like basic stuff that you should not have any mistakes on, because it's just really basic. And then next one is to shift my bootcamp experience to education. So I mean, if recruiter sees like, oh, being a student is considered experience, like, okay, like that's a little bit weird. So just put it under education so that it makes sense. Like, okay, this person gone through programming bootcamp as his or her part of the education process of you becoming a software developer. It's not like very like, but at the same time, like, nah, no. Lastly, I think I have not pointed out, but adding your source code for your projects is really important, because the links to your projects is important as much as you can when you're applying for your roles, and your resume should have the links to your projects, whether it is like if you were to have a Flutter mobile app, at least you have a Google Play Store kind of thing. If it doesn't have, then you can, host it on a website, Firebase hosting or whatnot, so that the recruiters at least can see, or the employees can see what the app looks like. And at the same time, if they really want to know how you code, then at least you have the source code, and then they can see like, okay, this person actually put in the state management, and they can see how well you code and such. Yeah, so adding source code actually really helps. So now I've shown what needs to be improved. I'm going to show you what I have actually made. So I'm going to show you the improved version of this resume. So this is the improved version of my resume. As you can see, I would say this is so much better than the previous resume that I have. It's easier to read as well. So I guess this is a little bit of like design or whatnot. Okay, so now I have my LinkedIn, my GitHub, and my email on top, so that if the recruiter or employers want to know more about who I am or what my projects are, they can definitely go and check it out. Then at the same time, I also add in my about me, but I didn't put the about me heading, which I think is fine. So say I'm going through a career change, always put in, I guess, first person. Like third person is a little bit weird, so first person makes it like, okay, this is your resume. Then at the same time, you can see that I have built websites and single page applications with Ruby on Rails. So I have added what kind of projects I have done and what type of tech stack I used. Then the next one is moreover, I have built mobile apps with Flutter. So if this, like, I guess startup is looking for a mobile developer, put in Flutter. But if they're not looking for like a Ruby on Rails thing, then I don't have to put it. But I guess it's good and bad in a way. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. So just put in Flutter if you just looking for Flutter developer. So the next one is your experience. So I only had one experience back then, which is interning at Tinker Tanker. And then another thing that I want to point out is how you actually make your resume much more interesting, meaning putting numbers, because putting quantifiable on numbers to what you have done is much more appealing. For example, I have taught over 30 coding lessons to over 100 students, and these lessons include all of the different types of development and programming languages. So I know, okay, I've done Python, C Sharp, and Unity, data science, Python, and blockchain in JavaScript. So it's like, oh, okay, so this person have done quite a bit of like teaching and also learning these new technologies. The second part is your projects. So I would say like put in what is as close to what the job role is. So if your experience is as close to what the job role is, then put it there. Experience as well. So if you don't have, then this is where the projects really shine. So if you were to have a Flutter project, just put it in. But at the same time, don't put like very boring Flutter projects, for example, a to-do app. So build something that's interesting, like for example, a to-do app for example, rock climbers. And then there is the unique selling point of the to-do app is that for rock climbers, we have to do checks for climbing. So we have to do clip checks. We have to make sure that the person who is climbing has his or her helmet on. So this is very specific for my hobby as a rock climber. So these are the things that you can actually personalize for your projects. Because if you were to put a to-do app that is just general, then I think a lot of people have seen to-do apps and it's so simple to do. What it makes it different? Like, oh, this to-do app can have a video element, have a photo element. So these are the kind of things that can make you stand out. So between a to-do app that is like very simple versus a to-do app that is like not say complicated, but is very unique to what your hobby is, that kind of thing. So these are the things that can really make you stand out. So for me, it's just Halal Goe, basically like a halal food review website, and then you have your source code. I didn't add the hyperlink, but you should add the hyperlink as well, and then you should put the hyperlink for the Halal Goe website as well. Then at the same time, I also led two developers to create website using all of the different technologies. So just post as much as you can. The next one is Instant Nanny. So a good one sentence summary of what your project is will really help. So Instant Nanny is a nanny for hire website, and then work with students to create landing page with Ruby on Rails and HTML, CSS, that kind of thing. And then next one is the education part, which I have improved a lot, which is this. So Alpha Camp Programming Bootcamp, post when do you do it, attended 12-week full-time course on full stack web development. So numbers really help recruiters, like, okay, this person gone through 12 weeks and then implemented 2 individual projects and 3 group projects. So at least they know, like, okay, I've done group projects before, and then the technologies that I've used so far. So just list as much as you can, because the recruiters are looking for the keywords, like a checklist, right? Okay, this person have done Ruby, Postgres, JavaScript, and whatnot. Then if you have unrelated education experience, right, I would just put it one liner, because it's not related to what I have, what I'm applying for. So like, it's applied drama and psychology, how can it benefit being me as a developer, so I don't really have that anything to add on. But I would highly recommend to put your, like, the latest education that you have attended in a institution or school. Like, for example, if you attended university but it's not related to tech, just put it in, because having education experience is better than none. But if you, so this is like because some recruiters, like, okay, maybe this person is a university grad and then going through the programming, this person have that capabilities of a university student, and now they are able to input their abilities as a university grad and put it into tech. So like having the impression of, like, okay, this person have that university experience, learning a lot of things in university, and now transition to tech. It sounds better than, oh, this person just have like tech, that kind of thing. So just put it in, because it actually sounds nicer. And then lastly, I just put in my volunteering experience. Okay, sorry, I did not do this properly, but basically, I just put in, like, I have taught over more than 100 students in Python and Scratch. So I think overall, like, I wouldn't say this is the best resume, but this is a better, it's a improved version of a resume. It's much more cleaner, and yeah, it's pretty plain, but I feel like it's more appealing for myself. And I guess having 2 columns, it's very like cramped, and this is very nicely laid out, so you don't have to make it fancy. Just like and it's like it's only 2 font sizes. So my name, Haris Amingan, is a big font, and then the rest is just 1 font size and 1 font, and then I just bold the different sections as well. It doesn't have to be great as well. So I think that's generally about for the resume that I have. So would this resume get me a job? It really depends. I would say that resume, it's something that's very hard for you to be outstanding at, but at the same time, to really get a job, I would say that it's actually having referrals or people who you know in the company, or people that have worked in the company. If they have So if you know people in the company that you want to work in, for example, if you know a person who works in Google and is a Google developer, and this person sees your work and is very impressed by your work, you will have a high chance of being hired there, rather than solely on the resume, because it is just a numbers game. You have to put in resume in a lot of like applications and companies, and usually the percentages is not really great. Like for example, if you were to apply to 100 companies, then one or 10, maybe if your resume is above average, then I guess 10 people will call you back, and then out of the 10 you might have an interview for one. And then if you are good, then you might get a job. But yeah, it is a numbers game. So just put this resume as simple as possible and as related to the job role as possible. And should for myself, I think I only have one page worth of experience in terms of tech. But if you have more than one page, that's great. But make sure that if you want to have, there's a debate between one page versus two page. If you were to have 2 pages, make sure that what you put in is something that can add value to the company, or at least have a tick towards the requirements of the company, or the job role. I mean, for the job role. So if you don't have what the skills is required, and you're making a 2-pager resume, I would not recommend. A 1 page is more than enough, I would say. So yeah, that's about it. So send your resume link in the description, and then either I will pick your resume, and then I will put in the point forms on what can be improved. And if there's a lot of people who send me resumes, then I will like generally put in what are the do's and don'ts, and what are the common mistakes within the resumes that I've seen so far. But usually, just put in your resume, and I think most likely your resume will be the one that I will review in the next session. So if you have any more comments about this resume, then put your comments down below as well. Like, what are the things that you think can be improved, or what are the things that you want to ask about? Like, for example, if I don't have any Flutter experience, should I still send my resume? I would say yes, because you don't have to have Flutter experience to get a Flutter developer job. It is what that. But if you were to be against with a lot of people who have Flutter experience, then I would highly recommend you to do it. Unless you have like a project that's super cool, like you've done it, you have 100,000 downloads, and you have 100,000 monthly active users, then I think that will be a better resume than people who have a Flutter experience. So it really depends on who you're against with, but general rule of thumb, always put in the skills that's required for the job role. So I think that's it for this resume review. So send your resume, the link in the description, and your resume might be the next one that I will review.